Começa agora mais um Diversilíngua, um podcast sobre o mundo dos idiomas, viagens e cultura.
Hello everyone, I'm your host Diego and I'm here with Renata. Hello Renata.
Hello Diego, hello everybody. This is our first episode totally held in English.
Yeah, and we are with a special guest today, Elle from the Speaking Tongues podcast. Hello, Elle.
Hi, Diego. Hi, Renata. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I'm doing great.
I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, and I'm so happy because today we are recording our first episode totally in English.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a little bit like, I'm not going to say that I'm freaking out. Of course not. Because it's my first time recording, but I'm a bit nervous.
Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. I'm nervous too, and I'll tell you guys, I don't speak Portuguese very well at all. So if you tried to speak in Portuguese or want me to do it, I would be sweating nervous. So
yeah, sometimes I think that I can make some mistakes in English, but I will try to do my best.
You're doing great. You're doing great, Diego.
Okay. Elle, we have a little bit about you. We know that you were born and raised in New York. Is that right?
That's correct.
You study Latin,
Mm-hmm.
Italian,
Yeah.
French, Spanish, and you started to learn German this year.
I did.
To challenge yourself.
I did. And the challenge is I'm failing the challenge.
Yeah.
I'm not doing so great. German is difficult.
Yeah, once I tried to...
For me, it's like, I wanted the challenge of just trying something that wasn't a Romance language, because that's where I've studied, all of them except Romanian. So I wanted to try something completely different, and just, I don't, where I'm used to seeing, feminine and masculine like endings to know like what a word is, or to try to say, well, this word, in Portuguese, it looks like this word in French or this word in Italian. So I can kind of understand what it is, but in German, I have no safety net. Mm-hmm. So I'm like a little tiny baby learning from the very beginning. So it's...
Yeah, I was really disappointed as well when I started with German, but then I started Dutch and I feel a little bit more comfortable.
Because you already speak English, and I found out that Dutch is closer to English than German is.
That's right.
I went into German thinking, I speak English. It's the same thing. And boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, once I tried to learn German. It's been, I think, 2 years ago. And it was because I went to German. I was preparing myself to a trip in Germany. Yeah, in Germany. Sorry. And because my friend lives there, my Brazilian friend, she is one of my best friends, and I like to learn a little bit of German because I like to communicate with people on the streets.
Yeah,
but it was kind of hard for me, to understand and to continue with the German. And I just know some little sentence, some little phrase,
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I couldn't get there. I went to Berlin once, and it was kind of hard to understand their accent.
Really?
Yeah, but it was only one situation. I was, I can't remember exactly what I were, and what I was, and I was asking for some instructions, on how to buy and to see, there was a code for us to get up to the, I think it's a tower. Yeah, I think I was about to visit a tower there.
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know how to know when to get in. So I asked for some information, and I asked her to repeat a few times because I wasn't getting very well. So I received an SMS, on my cell phone, and then I couldn't get what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But then
and
it was fine. I didn't have many trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Because the first place I went was a Italian restaurant. So I could hear the Italian accent.
okay. Yeah, and Ellie is also the host of the Speaking Tongues podcast. Can you explain a little bit that idea that you have to create a podcast, Ellie?
Sure. So I created this podcast in January of 2020, this year. And I've had all this time and all these years of studying languages. And I'm very, I like to say I've studied them because I don't speak any other language fluently. I've kind of collected all of these languages. And I got to a point where I just felt frustrated, and I started to say to myself, I'm not the only person. I cannot be the only person who's frustrated in learning a language or wanting to learn a language. So I created the podcast out of a desire to meet other people who were like me, to meet other people who were learning languages, and to just talk about their experiences, to talk about what it was like, talk about where there was success and where there was failure, or where there was trouble, where there was difficulty. And it just started out of wanting to connect with other people and wanting to talk to other people around the world and understand what motivates them and what drives them. I live in the US, and a lot of people who I meet who speak other languages, they speak it because it's their family language, it's their heritage language. So I don't meet many people who have spent years in school studying Swahili or Mandarin or anything else. So the people I know who speak Spanish, their families from a Spanish speaking country, or they're people who speak Mandarin, their families are from China. So I really just wanted to connect with other learners and other people who are interested in learning and other people who are interested in the cultures that make us all so unique.
Yeah.
And what were the advantages of studying languages for you?
Oh, for me, okay. So when I was very young, I loved maps, and I had this atlas, I remember, and I would look at it every weekend. Sometimes I would just sit on the floor in my house and just read page after page after page after page, just go over it. And I always knew that I wanted to travel, and I love to travel. And for me, languages is a way to get through travel easily and understanding other languages, because once you start to understand another language, you start to understand another person's culture. You start to understand why they're different from you and why that difference is so special. You see the world in different eyes. So for me, that's really where it came from. I'd never been able to stick to one language, unfortunately, as much as I want to. But I think that's just because I'm so curious. I'm so curious. I'm so interested in people all over the world and the things that people have to offer. So that's what it meant to me.
And do you have any specific method?
No, is the short answer. I've tried so many. I think that because when I really started learning, and I'm talking, oh God, do I want to say how long ago it was? 25 years ago, when I really started learning in school. And, 25 years ago, there was only school. That was the only option you had. Like, we didn't have the robust internet the way we have it now. So it was like you either get a book and you learn it on your own, or you're lucky enough to have a class, and that's how you learn. So I've had a lot of that. Lately, I've been, my big thing was like, I was always nervous to talk to people. And, we talked about that earlier, but I was always very nervous to talk and to make mistakes. And I feel so self-conscious about that. So now I'm actively trying to push myself to make mistakes and just get used to making mistakes, and like realizing that the world is not going to end if I, say the wrong word in the sentence, and no one's going to, push me off a cliff if I say the wrong thing.
Not.
Yeah. Once when I was in the US, I've been in the US in 2000. I went there in 2013.
Okay.
And when I was there, I was so freaking out about the way I speak English. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna make a lot of mistakes. People wouldn't understand me, and things like that.
Yeah.
And I realized when I were there in the United States, I realized that a lot of people were foreigners.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was in a small town close to Washington, D.C., Arlington.
Oh, Arlington, Virginia.
Yeah. And I've been there for 1 month. And I could see a lot of foreigners, that barely speak English, and they were working, like as a tax driver or other professions, other positions. And I realized that oh my gosh, I need to speak. I have to speak to become better in English.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was funny because there was a time that I needed to speak on the phone with someone else from the Barnes and Noble library.
Yeah.
Because bookstore. Yeah. Barnes and Noble, because I bought a book wrongly and I needed to change it. And I needed to talk with the people on the phone, and I was so nervous and so anxious. And I realized that when I'm anxious, I make more mistakes. And it's been hard to record this episode right now, but
No,
I think that
you're doing great.
Yeah, but I think that you are giving us an environment that for me it's like I've already met you. It's like I've already known you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great so far.
I'm glad you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And please don't worry about making mistakes. Like I totally understand you, and I think that's what really matters about learning a language. Is I think we get caught up on, I do it too. Like we get caught up on saying, oh, I have to be perfect, I have to do everything right. But
yeah,
we really have to communicate, and that's the most important thing about about this process. If you can communicate what you want and what you need, and you can be understood, that's the most important thing, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, same here.
And Ellie, I think that you've already mentioned, but you've already told us about why did you start your podcast? Yeah, you already told us. But what do you think your listeners can learn from your podcast?
I think that one thing, and I just said this, but I think what I try to do for people to take away from the show, I want people to feel comfortable. I want people to see that learning a language is not a linear process. I'm proof of that. I've had a lot of stops and starts along my own journey. I want people to feel like it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to just focus on trying to communicate. And it's okay to be nervous. It's perfectly okay to be nervous. I'm always nervous, but I want people to see me as an example of somebody who's working through that, of somebody who's tried different methods, tried different ways to do things, and still hasn't come up with a measurable amount of success. Well, it's kind of measurable, but if fluency is the measure, if fluency is the goal, I haven't reached that. And a lot of people are going through that. So I want people to come away from the show saying, it's okay. It's okay to do things on my own terms and do things in a way that works for me and really not measure up to anyone else's success. And I want people to get ideas about how to learn different languages because, like you asked me, Renata, what my methods were. And I'm like, I feel like I've been through it all. It's like, you tried every single diet under the sun and you still can't lose like the last 5 pounds, right? That's how I feel. Just like I've tried everything. And there are other people out there who may be looking for ideas, and to hear that from other people, to hear stories from other people, I think maybe that will give people motivation, give them ideas, give them opportunity to say, I can do this too, and I can, I can find my own success for what I need to learn this language.
Interesting.
Oh, that's nice. And which was the most interesting interview you've already recorded for your show so far?
I can't say that.
No,
I can't. Yeah. I can't say. But honestly, I mean, I'm already on. This is only, I think, 20 episodes I've done at this point. I don't know if you want me to say that because I don't know when you're going to publish. But I've done a number of episodes already, and honestly, I've learned something from all of them. I can't say that there's a single episode that is a favorite. There were probably some conversations that were easier to have than other ones. And that's just a personal thing. Sometimes I connect personally with people in a way that I don't connect with other people, which is, every one of my guests has been fantastic, and they've all given me more than I could ever imagine that they would have given me. So, I really can't pick a favorite. I really can't pick a favorite. They've all been wonderful.
Yeah, it's hard.
Gostaria de praticar seu idioma em encontros de conversação gratuito? Procure o Clube Poliglota da sua cidade. Existem clubes poliglotas em diversas cidades brasileiras. Pratique idiomas e faça amigos. Mais informações em www.clubepoliglotabrasil.com.br.
And I'd like to mention why I've met Elle and her show, because we started our podcast, Diversilíngua, and we started to follow some podcasts close to our idea of talking about languages and culture and stuff, And I found your podcast on Instagram. And I was, oh my gosh, it's interesting to see a podcast like this because it's almost like our idea, but it's recorded by an American.
Yeah.
And why not record with her and talk a little bit about it and exchange our experience,
Yeah. I think that's great. And what's interesting, Diego, is that when I started this show, I was looking to see, like, is anyone else doing this? Is anyone else doing this kind of idea? And I think at the time, I didn't see anybody doing it, but I also think I wasn't looking in the right place. And because now I'm seeing people, you guys, I'm doing something. There may be 3 or 4 other people who are doing similar to what we're doing. So I think it's really great. Like, I'm not a person who, I'm not very competitive. I'm not, I'm a collaborative person. I'm not a competitive person. So I think that all of our voices, we all have something different to contribute, so there's not a need for like, I want to be better, or I want to be like, let somebody else feel that way. I don't feel that way. So I was happy to find your show, and I was very happy to connect with you. And I'm glad that we're able to do this. And I really need to learn Portuguese so that I can come back and we can do the interview in Portuguese.
I've listened to one of your episodes, and I can see that you're willing to learn Portuguese and get to know Brazil. I found you very excited about that.
So I've wanted to. Oh gosh, I've traveled a bit. I haven't traveled as much as I want to travel, but Brazil has been at the top of my list since I was 15 years old. And it's been a very, very, very long time. And my first trip to South America was last year. I went to Buenos Aires to visit a very good friend of mine. And I was just walking around and I said, how have I never come to South America before? I've always wanted to come to South America, but Brazil for sure has been like my favorite. I love Brazilian culture from afar. I've been dancing samba for almost 10 years, and I've been like every year on my birthday I cook like a feijoada for myself, and I make caipirinhas.
Really?
I have to send you guys pictures because I did it. I made feijoada for the first time.
Renata is carioca. Renata
Oh my
is carioca.
God!
I did. Brazil, I mean, Rio is number one on my list. Like, I just, I really, just everything I see. And I know, I'm very conscious of the fact that, like, when people say, oh, I want to come to New York and it looks like perfect and it's like Sex in the City and it's this and that. And I'm like, I live here. So this is my life. It's not what you see in the movies. So I'm very conscious. I'm aware, like Rio, I know it's not what I see. Mm-hmm. People live there. It's real life. It's reality. But I'm very, very drawn to that and Brazilian culture. And it just looks like such a beautiful country, and I can't wait to visit someday. I've been saving money for almost a year. Like, I'm gonna come visit someday. I promise. I swear.
Okay,
I hope
please
so.
come to Rio.
And here in Fortaleza, we have a different culture
Yes.
from the rest of the country, because Brazil is so big,
Yeah.
We have some similarities, but we have some different things. Like here, the popular kind of music is forró.
I love forró. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have Baião de Dois is another typical dish here. Baião de Dois and tapioca, things like that. Is Brazil is so big.
It is, and it's the same as like the U.S. It's like what's popular here may not even be popular in a nearby city like Boston or Philadelphia, and it certainly is not going to be the same in Texas or in Chicago or in Los Angeles or San Francisco. So I understand, like, you can't really define your country by one city that everyone around the world sees, during every World Cup. Like, it's not.
Yeah. And Ellie, we talked a little bit about your podcast, and what was the best tip that you've already got in your about language acquisition in your podcast? Do you remember? Do you have any special tip?
I think one of the best tips that I heard somebody say, and it was kind of just changing the mindset of how I think about things. Somebody pointed out, when you're learning a language, when you're a child, that you're doing little things day by day in order to acquire the language. You're not just learning it. You're not memorizing things. Like when you're a child, you're learning by listening to people speak and imitating the way that they speak. You're learning by just seeing little things. As you're growing up, you're seeing, I don't know, things on the subway or on the train, or you're seeing books, you're seeing things on television, you're paying attention to people's behavior, and you're acquiring the language in every every sense, using all of your senses to acquire the language. And I'm really paraphrasing because that's not exactly what she said, but that's what I'm taking away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And it really made me think about, excuse me, it really made me think about how, as you know, when you're a child, you're learning the basics, colors, shapes, numbers. You're reading children's books. So I think for me, you know, when you're an adult, you don't want to feel like a child, right? Mm-hmm. And you're very conscious of like, oh, that I'm too old for that. That's for babies. That's whatever. But I think the biggest thing that I learned is just don't be afraid to go all the way back to the beginning. If you need to get a children's book, if you need to watch a children's show, if you need to listen to children's music, you know, maybe, you know, that's a good starting point to do that for yourself, in order to acquire in the same way that you acquired your native tongue, your native language.
Thank you.
Yeah, talking about languages, you've mentioned something about people who came from, how can I say that, from other families from other countries, you know, immigrants and stuff, and then how they acquire a language, and just because they came from that specific family, from that specific country. So how, what can you tell us about the plurality of languages in New York City? How do you see that? And yeah, I would like you to mention something about that, and about the ethnicities. Also, you see are more mainstream there.
Sure. So in New York City, there are a lot of, New York City is an immigrant city. And I think that's what makes our city so special, is that there are people here, there have always been people here for the past 400 years from every part of the globe. And today, I think that as far as plurality, I think what we see in I'm trying to think about this, because I had a thought a couple of months ago that for as diverse as New York City is, and for as many languages as you hear just walking down the street, especially during the summer and when we have tourists in a normal year, and during Christmas when we have tourists during a normal Christmas season, you hear languages like everywhere you turn, and it's wonderful. But you don't see a lot of, how do I say this? You don't see a lot of, I guess, store signs. So you don't see a lot of signs in like store windows. You don't in anything other than English. You don't see, you'll see it on the subway, like any type of notices for like the service is changing and things like that, but you don't see a lot of bilingualism in New York City, like written bilingual. You hear it, but you don't really see it. You don't see it on menus, you don't see it on street signs. If you do see it, usually where it is in neighborhoods where there's a higher concentration of people from a specific group. So Chinatown, or there's a part of South Brooklyn there's a lot of Russian and Ukrainian people there. So you'll see a lot of Cyrillic, you'll see a lot of Russian in the signs. You'll see a lot of that. Spanish, I think, would be probably the most popular, where you see, whenever you do see something that's bilingual, a lot of times it's in Spanish and English as well. But also that depends. If you're in a very Spanish speaking neighborhood, you'll definitely see more of that. And you were asking me about, Renata, about what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, about the immigrants, which you could see that is the most, how can I say, they have the most number of people. You say, oh, I can see a lot of Chinese, or I can see a lot of, I don't know, people from Mexico.
Right. Yeah, which group of people do you think is the most popular in New York? I don't know.
I don't think that's easy to answer. I would say, I don't think there's a most popular, but I definitely noticed that there are a lot of Spanish speakers and there are a lot of Chinese speakers here, whether that's Mandarin or Cantonese or another, dialect of Chinese. As far as Spanish speakers, there are a lot of Spanish speakers here from all over Latin America and the Caribbean, but I think we have a large representation of Caribbean Spanish speakers here. So a lot of Dominican, people from the Dominican Republic, people from Puerto Rico, Mexico, yes, but I think that Mexican culture is probably more dominant in the south of the U.S., like Texas, Arizona, Southern California. But I think definitely we have a lot of Caribbean Spanish influence here for sure. And I would say Chinese would probably be, because Chinatown, there's a Chinatown in Manhattan, there's one in Queens, there's one in Brooklyn. So there's quite a few Chinatowns. There's a lot of Chinese culture too, and it's amazing. It's so fun.
Yeah, I'm starting to realize that when you go for example, for a program, au pair, for example, program, and you think that you're going to speak English all the time, you're going to be really frustrated. If you think that. I've already had a student who went to this program, and she was complaining that it turns out she was speaking a lot of Spanish, and she just spoke English with, I think with the mother and with the family. She was,
yeah. I mean, you definitely hear Spanish a lot here. I mean, even I think the Spanish language has become like so synonymous with New York City too. It's because even if you're not Latino, Latinx, you still have you hear Spanish everywhere. You hear Spanish spoken everywhere. And you're starting to see it spoken more, I think. But it's still like I don't know, maybe because I'm not Latina, like there are things that I probably don't recognize as well as I could. But yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting observation. I didn't think of it that way.
And I think that it changes throughout the time, because here in Fortaleza, for example, we are having more people from Korea and from China than before,
Wow.
Yeah. I think that it changed. Maybe it changed throughout the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see some of this here too. Yeah, we have. I think I have some Chinese neighbors.
Yeah.
Here.
I think it's cool because like where people come to your city, and they come to your country, they bring their food with them, and the food is always so good. So that's like, I think that's always for me. Like I'm not a foodie, but I love to try different foods and stuff. So, when I start noticing like, oh, there's more of a certain type of restaurant in this neighborhood or in that neighborhood, like that always gets me. I'm always like excited about that.
Talking about food, what do you think is the typical food of New York?
Oh gosh, that's hard to say.
Because once I was there, I've noticed a lot of Chinese people selling yakisoba, and a lot of hamburgers. But I didn't realize that kind of food is from New York.
Yeah,
because it's a cosmopolitan city.
It is. Yeah, I think that what you would consider New York foods, they're not like American foods. Like they're immigrant foods. There were foods that were brought here 100 years ago by people from Poland and Germany. And, so I would say, like, if I'm saying pizza, like, I love pizza, but obviously that's Italian. But I think the way that we do pizza is very, very New York. It's very distinctive from if you have pizza in Chicago or if you have pizza in California, for example. I definitely think bagels is a New York thing, but again, bagels are, they're, I don't know, but bagels may be Polish or German. I should know this, but I don't. But they did come here from Jewish immigrants. It's from then. What else is typically? I mean, pretzels. Again, pretzels.
Yeah.
There's so many things. But yeah, like you said, Diego, it's a very cosmopolitan city. So, I mean, yakisoba, you can definitely find that here. We have like a Koreatown, so you can definitely get like Korean, like kimchi. You can get Korean food here, and just everything. I mean, we have a little Brazil here. You can well, there's a whole street where you can just have all the Brazilian food your heart desires. So, yeah, you can find just about anything here. For me, my typical New York food is definitely pizza because I love pizza and I think that we do it the best. I'm not ashamed to say I think we do it the best in the country. So, but yeah, you can get just about anything here.
Yeah, here in Brazil, I think that the best pizza you are going to find is in São Paulo.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What kind of toppings do they put on it?
A lot. But it's
as far as your imagination goes.
Yeah, but it's because what I've heard is that in São Paulo they have a pizza more like Italian pizza.
Yeah, it's Italian-like. Some of them, I think I don't know if they go to Italy. And they take a course on it, or I know that they have some kind of approval, to be a pizzaiolo.
Yeah, the best pizzas in Brazil are in São Paulo.
Okay,
definitely.
I will add that to my list for when I come to Brazil.
Yeah, it's okay, and now I'll come back to the language topic. Sure. So some say that Americans in general are not really into languages. What's your opinion about it?
I think I would agree with that. I think that's true. I mean, I think a lot of people, if you really think about it, I think in the US, we don't have a lot of value on learning another language in order to get a job. And I think here, a lot of people are focused on work and work and work and work and work. And that's a different podcast, a different conversation, I think, about the American mindset and working yourself and not enjoying your life. But I think that I don't see the value on it. And I'm saying this as somebody who was educated here, who did grow up here. I never felt like my course of study in French was, people would always look at me and say, I didn't study French, but, people would look at someone who studied a language and what are you going to do with that? Are you going to be a translator? Are you going to go work at the UN? Which is like just the standard response that I would hear if I mentioned wanting to study another language. I think that a lot of people probably still don't know what they can do being, having another language, being someone who speaks another language. And I think that's also tied in with, I'm not an expert on this, so, don't, don't get me in trouble. I'm sorry. But I feel like because this is a country where there is so much immigration and there are so many people who have their heritage languages, I think we have a really sad precedent in this country of discrediting people who don't speak English and kind of, I'm saying this in air quotes, like forcing people and telling people if you don't speak English, you won't get ahead. And I think there's a lot of that mentality here. Like, if you don't speak English, you're going to fall behind. If you don't speak English, you're not going to get a good job. And I think people still have that mentality here. And I think that forces them to discredit the value of learning another language and understanding other cultures.
You know, that reminds me, well, we hear this a lot in here. But that reminds me of another thing, because I work with kids, and some of them during my classes approach me and ask, teacher, what happens in the United States? Do they learn Portuguese? And I was wondering, how is language, how is the access to another language they have in schools?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh God, like, I'm even thinking of myself trying to find a class that I can join to learn Portuguese, and it's hard. And I'm in New York City, and it's hard. I know that they're out there, but like, for example, if you want to learn Spanish, if you want to learn Mandarin, then those are the languages that I think you have the easiest access to learn here, because a lot of people learn Spanish because there are so many Spanish speakers in the country. So that's what they want to learn. And we do have so much access to culture, to Latin culture. A lot of people want to learn Mandarin because they want to do business with people in China. But outside of that, it can be very like, okay, you'll find French because, French is perennially, it's always very popular. You may find Italian, but something like Portuguese, something like German, something like, and then trying to think what else, Russian or Swahili or Japanese. Actually, Japanese might be popular. Hindi, like those are things that you really have to dig to find. And I think you can definitely find private tutors, but that's expensive.
Sure.
So I think that, to answer your student's question, like, people do learn Portuguese if they want to, or if they have a need for it, but where it's like as popular to see those kind of classes being offered, I don't think that they are.
But in schools, they don't have any kind of subject to that. Is that something optional, for example, in schools?
So I think that I've been out of school for a long time, so I'm not really sure. But I think that that's not. I don't remember ever being offered Portuguese. I don't ever remember being offered.
Any language.
Yeah.
Any language.
Yeah, I think that, I was offered languages in high school. My choices were Latin. I studied Latin in high school for the whole time. But the other options were Spanish, French, and Italian. So I see, and the high school that I went to had those options. Other high schools, really, you only learn maybe Spanish, maybe Italian was your only other option. And because there were a great deal of Italian Americans in my neighborhood where I went to high school. So maybe it also depends on what kind of neighborhood you're in, because if you're in a neighborhood where there are a lot of Korean students, then you may have an opportunity to learn Korean. If you're in a place where there is a large population of Portuguese speakers, you may have that option. So I think it also may depend on where you are in the country, or maybe where you are in the city, or what kind of program that your school has. But as far as it being common, I don't think it's common at all.
Okay, so it's not mandatory, it's just optional. You can opt for studying?
So it was mandatory when I was in school. It was mandatory to have a language when I was in school, but in college, and when I was in high school, when I was in college, it was mandatory up to a certain level. So it wasn't like you had to take it throughout all of your years of school. You only maybe had to take 1 or 2 semesters of any language that fit the requirement.
Got it.
Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
that was a roundabout answer, but I'm
I'm for me it's fine. It's fine. I just was curious about language access, in the, concerning education in the United States or in New York, because especially because of this question I asked you, about how Americans are into language.
Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to people from other countries, and their language education is compulsory. So they really have to learn.
Yeah.
It's part of their degree. It's part of their program. For a lot of us, it's not. If you go to university and you study bioengineering, you don't have a reason to learn German. So, I mean, if you want to, you can do it, but the school is not going to force you to learn a foreign language I'm saying in quotes, a foreign language, but, and I think that's a long topic.
Yeah.
That's a lot, but it's unfortunate. And I think that we should have more emphasis on that. And I think especially it would probably help attitudes in this country where people could be, more ready to embrace our differences and embrace the immigrant culture that's here, because there are some people who don't. There are some people who reject that, and who reject people who come to this country, and they're making a living. They're doing their best, and I think it would make this country a lot better if people did make that effort to learn another language and try to understand how other people live and where other people are coming from.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, here, me and Renata, we are organizers of groups of polyglots in Brazil, and sometimes we have events for practicing other languages for free.
Cool.
Presential events and
Virtual ones too. Yeah.
Virtual ones, yeah. And also nowadays we are trying to give a free class of some language like Spanish, English, French. Because it's not the entire course. It's not a course like you are going to learn how to speak fluently
Just
Spanish.
notions,
It's not
right?
like that. It's just the basics, but it's been good to do something like that, because we are helping other people to get to know other language and to get to know other culture, and it's been really great.
That's great to hear. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, I've taken a class on Tupi. Tupi is an ancient language from indigenous people from Brazil.
Cool.
And it's amazing. I think it's ancient Tupi because Tupi is not actually spoken in Brazil anymore. And it was really amazing how names of cities, for example, or neighborhoods are in Tupi. And I felt really like as if I were connecting to my culture.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was wondering if there's any words or any foods or anything that you notice, any cultural ideas that come from Tupi that you notice in Portuguese or in Brazil at all.
Yeah, now I can remember just Iguaba and Piabetá. 2 places in Rio.
Cool.
I think Piabetá is something like man, and Iguaba is a river. But it's kind of it's something about the river, the water in the river. But I can't remember very well. But it was really, really funny.
That's so
yeah. We have a lot of words that came from Tupi in Brazilian Portuguese.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how you find out when you have those classes.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that we are almost at the end of our show. our episode. And we at every time that we are almost at the end, we ask the guest, what would you recommend for our audience, like books or movies? It's like a cultural moment. If you want to recommend anything, like a book or a movie, it's up to you.
About New York, or about English, or about
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything you want.
Oh gosh. Okay, so if I'm recommending a book about New York, I would recommend a book called The Colossus of New York. It's by an author named Colson Whitehead, and he's one of my favorite authors. And I really love that book because it's really, he's a native New Yorker, so he like me, so I can read his words and I understand. It's a really true interpretation of what it's like to spend your life here and to see New York change so much. I think that would be the book that I recommend. As far as movies, I'm not that big of a movie person.
Okay.
I was actually, oh gosh, I think I kind of dread that question because now I'm like, I don't know what to say.
No problem. You can recommend a book, or I don't know, a place to visit in New York. Can be
a place to visit. Oh, that's a good one. So one place that I love in New York, so I grew up in the Bronx, and I always recommend for people to visit the Bronx. And I know a lot of people don't like to go there because they hear bad things and how it's scary or it's dangerous. And I don't think it's either of those things, but I really love, there's a botanical garden, the New York Botanical Garden in the Bronx. It's huge and it's so beautiful, and it's really something that I don't think a lot of people who come to New York get a chance to see. Which, maybe I shouldn't be saying that because I feel like it's like for hours, it's like really special. But for people who want to visit New York and who want to come and see something totally different, I definitely think, head up to the Bronx, head up to the Botanical Gardens if it's a beautiful day, like if it's summertime or in the fall and the spring. It's really quiet, it's tranquil, it's beautiful. It's the opposite of Times Square. It's the opposite of Wall Street and downtown. So that's probably what I would.
When I went to the United States, I went to New York City. I've been there for 3 nights, I think. And once I crossed the bridge until the Bronx,
Yeah?
Yeah, I crossed the bridge. How was the name of the bridge? The most famous one.
Are you thinking of the Brooklyn Bridge?
Yeah, the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah, so the Brooklyn Bridge goes to Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brooklyn.
Yeah,
oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
My mistake.
That's okay.
Yeah, but I do like to visit Bronx.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've already heard a lot of things about Bronx and stuff.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Brooklyn, and
that's okay.
I made a mistake.
Don't worry, Brooklyn is very popular. So, and definitely when I was a kid, nobody was going to Brooklyn, and now everybody's going to Brooklyn. So, it's nice to see people just explore New York City outside of Manhattan, and there's so much to do, so much the city has to offer. So, I encourage people to visit.
Thank you. Yeah, and now it's a space for you to share your contact or your show or whatever you want to share with our audience.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me on the show, and I really enjoy talking to both of you. My show, Speaking Tongues Podcast, is available just about anywhere you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and several other platforms. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at Speaking Tongues Pod. You can find me on Facebook, the Speaking Tongues Podcast, and I have a page on there, and you can like and follow my page, or you can join our community on there. And you can also find me on Twitter. I'm at ST Podcast Host on Twitter.
Oh, okay. It was a pleasure to talk with you, Elle. I loved it. I loved it, that episode. It was really great. For me, it was a little bit hard at the beginning because I was a little bit nervous. But you are so friendly. You were so kind with us, and it was a great episode. And I hope that our audience can also comment about this episode on our social media and find more about speaking tongues. Elle has already talked about her show, and that's it. What do you have to say? What do you want to say, Renata?
Well, I'd like to say that it was a pleasure to have you here, and I also love it. I was a little bit nervous, but now I'm pretty satisfied with the interview. I think it was one of the best ones. And, I love challenges, and it was a big one for me. And so I really enjoy it. That's what I have to say.
Thank you so much.
People. Thank you, Elle.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for challenging yourselves. And you both did great. Your English is great. Don't worry. Your English is great.
Okay, but that's it, people, and I hope you can comment more about this episode on our social media, and that's it. See you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Você ouviu Diversilíngua, podcast idealizado por membros do Clube Poliglota Fortaleza e Clube Poliglota Rio de Janeiro. Siga-nos nas redes sociais, procure por Diversilíngua no Instagram e no Twitter. Para contato, diversilingua@gmail.com.